Have you two ever watched the WWE or WWF as it was before?
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah, not really. I'm not a massive fan.
That doesn't surprise me,
I was about
Mark.
to say that.
In the old days, Martha, maybe not your time, but on Saturday afternoons, all you could get on TV, on Grandstand BBC, was Rugby League. On World of Sport, wrestling. Giant haystacks, Big Daddy.
I'd actually forgotten about Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks. I do remember them from my youth.
Because Linda McMahon was in the WWF. And the first time I ever saw Linda McMahon, she was pretending to kick her then husband, Vince McMahon, in the genitals. And now she's running the Department of Education.
Well,
which
that's the
we will
CV
talk
she
about.
needed.
This week, we've launched a short survey to learn more about you and your listening habits. It only takes a few minutes to complete, and your input helps us improve. So please do click the link in our description and let us know what you think.
I'm James Matthews.
I'm Martha Kelner.
And I'm Mark Stone.
Mark, you're in a car. Where are you?
I'm somewhere between West Virginia and Washington, D.C. I actually have no idea where I am because I've been sitting in the back of the car writing a piece for next week. I'm in a service station. Dunkin' Donuts opposite, once again.
Oh, I like your style. Life on the road. It's all glamour. You're listening to day 61 of Trump 100. Another federal government department is heading for the scrap heap.
Yes, we'll have more too on Trump versus the judiciary.
And what do Elon Musk's donations say about his unwavering support for Donald Trump?
First, to the catchphrase of the day, let's get ready to rumble. It's all because of a woman by the name of Linda McMahon. She's the former WWE promoter, hence the rumble thing. Sorry about that. She is Donald Trump's pick to run the US Department of Education and was given the takedown brief, told actually by Trump to put herself out of a job when she was appointed. Sure enough, she's winding down the department, even if it still has a heartbeat. The White House is saying today some of its critical functions will continue.
Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all.
Look, I think it's probably worth explaining what the Department of Education here in America does, because it is a little different from government departments of education in other countries. It doesn't set curricula or salaries for teachers, nor does it say what tests students should be doing. That is generally left to local governments in each of the 50 states across the land. They take care of all of that sort of stuff. It's not that the department will cease to exist or that education will somehow stop with this Trump executive order announcement, but as a federal department controlling aspects of education from Washington, it is being dismantled as of now. Most of what the Department of Education does is to fund education research, to administer student aid, grants for students paying college, university tuition, and very importantly, to offer grants for education programs for disadvantaged and disabled children. And the Trump administration seems to be suggesting, isn't it, that that will get retained. Here's the kicker, though. It enforces anti-discrimination and civil rights laws. The department spends hundreds of billions of dollars on those things. That, according to Donald Trump and his team, is an unnecessary woke agenda.
It was kind of odd, wasn't it, the way the stage was set up for this announcement. Donald Trump on his big podium, surrounded by young children on little sort of mock-up school desks.
Weird.
And Donald Trump used the phrase eliminating the Department of Education, but he's not actually able to do that. He doesn't have the power to do that. It was Congress that established the Department of Education, and it is only Congress that can totally abolish it. But Trump is well on his way to hollowing out the Department of Education. The department's already laid off nearly half of its staff. It's cancelled dozens of those research contracts you were talking about, Mark. And this order will also direct that programmes receiving any remaining education department funds won't advance diversity, equity and inclusion or gender ideology. And universities across the country are already falling in line so as not to risk their funding too.
Yeah, it should be said, Republicans, they've long wanted to get rid of the Education Department. It was brought in by Democrat President Jimmy Carter. There has been much pushback, and we've heard much of it in the past few hours from the various invested parties. The ATF Teachers Union, they're making the point that this federal funding underpins the support for the most needy students. As you pointed out, Mark, students with disabilities and low incomes. They say the areas most affected will be rural districts, many of them actually in Republican areas. So that same union, incidentally, they're currently suing the Department of Education for suspending repayment plans for student funding, the funds that people with less ready cash need to access higher education.
I remember when I first moved to America 3 years or so ago, just over 3.5 years now. God, is it that long? The whole issue of education, I was struck at how much of a big deal it was. There was a lot of debate, school boards, fights in school boards between parents who were upset with the way that their kids were being taught in schools. And there was this perception that it was coming from Washington, that this sort of woke agenda was seeping into schools, and that schools had kind of lost their way. It's true that it comes at a time of profound change in the way that our kids are educated. The sort of simple, old-fashioned education, reading and writing. I think some parents feel that that's kind of been lost or been diluted a bit. And I think that plays into what Trump has done here. But as always with Trump, he's now being accused of taking a chainsaw where perhaps a scalpel it would be more appropriate tool to deal with this issue.
This unites the two sides of Donald Trump's party, both the traditional establishment Republicans who have long railed against the Department of Education because they want to see more power handed to state and local government and, as you were saying, Mark, families themselves to educate children. It unites them with the MAGA wing of Donald Trump's party who are trying to advance their anti-woke agenda because one of the major functions of the Department of Education, as you were saying before, is protecting civil rights, of ensuring that ethnic minority children have the same access to educational programmes as their peers. So it is a great applause line for Donald Trump, a great way to unite his party and a great way to show that he is following through on his campaign promises.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's going to address the failing standards that he was talking about, though, is it? He was on stage mentioning the fact that 0 students in some high schools have basic math skills to add up. I doubt whether that's true. I'm not sure there's a single high school in the nation where 0 students are able to do basic math. But 90% of the funding for these schools comes from local and state government already. So it's only 10% of the funding that's coming from the Department of Education.
Yeah, but it's trademark Trump, isn't it? Paint a picture that everything is absolutely fundamentally broken and terrible, and then say that you're going to fix it all. I mean, let's see how it goes. Anyway, let's move on. To what extent are we witnessing a slow burn constitutional crisis across the country with the Trump administration versus the judiciary? We've talked about it a lot over the past few days. Really, truly a tense situation between these two sort of pillars of American democracy, the executive, the White House, and the judiciary, raising big questions about what the rule of law means for Donald Trump.
Yeah, there's a power struggle at the top, a struggle with the power of the presidency at the very heart of it. How much power does Donald Trump have? That's being sorely tested through the courts right now. Every day we see instances in which the Trump administration is doing something, asserting some right that threatens the ultimate authority in the land, the Constitution itself. There's case after case being challenged through the courts where changes made, actions taken are being challenged. And there's a serious question over, yes, the rulings in these cases, but also a more serious question, I would say, about whether Donald Trump respects the court's authority and the rulings of these judges, which is by no means certain.
Yeah, there's no sort of universal definition, is there, of a constitutional crisis? And sometimes it's been used in the past where perhaps it's not an accurate use, but it's generally accepted as presidential defiance, ignoring essentially of rulings and laws that are made by judges. And there are quite a few examples in the past, 61 days of Donald Trump doing that. The firing of thousands of federal workers in violation, seemingly, of civil service protections, denying legal residents the right to see a judge, and this week refusing to abide by that ruling made by Judge Boasberg to stop the deportation flights of Venezuelan immigrants. That happened at the weekend. More than 200 people, alleged gang members, were flown to a jail in El Salvador. Until now, there's been little information about the identities of those 238 male Venezuelan citizens. But just before we were about to start recording this podcast, CBS News obtained a list of their names. This is interesting because the lack of identification, which the press secretary Caroline Leavitt had cited as protecting privacy, has left a lot of families wondering if their loved ones were on those planes. So perhaps answers for them now.
It's pretty remarkable stuff, and there's more from the CBS reporting as well. Here's a quote. The US government has said in a court declaration that while some of those expelled have criminal histories in the US, many do not. So there is, in court documents, a revelation that the American government is admitting that some of these people don't even have criminal histories.
I think will spread fear across the land, particularly amongst people, who fall into the category of an enemy. You have a head of the FBI who famously said that he had drawn up an enemies list. You have a president of the country who has spoken about retribution, whose speeches are peppered with the names of people that he feels deserve retribution and are clearly in his sight. So I suppose the question is, does the government get to pick and choose who doesn't belong in the United States for whatever reason, stick them on a plane and place them in a prison, in a jurisdiction where no lawyer in this land can bring them back?
Well, to answer your first question, Donald Trump would say yes, the government has absolute right to decide who is in and who is not in the country. The question is whether the Constitution would back up that.
One of those people who has been deported to El Salvador and is currently being held in a maximum security facility is a Venezuelan football player. His name is Jersey Reyes Barrios. And he apparently came to the United States, according to his lawyer, after being beaten and tortured when he attended a protest against the Maduro regime. He was deported because ICE say that there was a tattoo which is a distinguishing feature of a notorious Venezuelan gang. His lawyer says that the person who gave him this tattoo has signed a deposition to say actually he just wanted this tattoo because it looked a little bit like the Real Madrid football team badge.
Wow.
Surrounded by rosary beads. So he, in effect, is saying that this is a case of mistaken identity, that he came here to escape persecution in his native country, Venezuela, but is being treated like a criminal. So I think there are serious questions about the amount of background work that Trump's teams are doing to identify these people who they say are criminals, but many of them they say are not.
And that's interesting, Martha. There are also examples of targeted arrests of pro-Gaza campaigners on university campuses. We've spoken about Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University student. Now, a researcher from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., Badar Khan Suri. He's an Indian national on a student visa. He's been arrested by masked immigration agents. His lawyer has argued that he's being punished because of the Palestinian heritage of his wife. She's a US citizen. They say he's been punished because the government suspects that he and his wife oppose US foreign policy towards Israel.
Yeah, there are anecdotal examples of this happening where people are with US visas leaving the country for one reason or another, trying to get back in and not being able to. I was interviewing some people here in West Virginia yesterday, and we got chatting after the interview. Just regular folk in a small town in West Virginia. We got chatting after the interview, and we were talking about immigration. He said, "Oh, I'm a doctor at the local hospital. One of my fellow doctors, who is from the Middle East, went to Dubai on holiday last week, and he hasn't come back because he tried to board the plane, and he was told that he couldn't come here. He was on some sort of a list and was not able to come, they just don't know why he's not been allowed back."
Now, to add to a very busy picture, we've got impeachment for cash. It's an Elon Musk thing. All these judges who, in his view, obstruct the will of the Trump administration, well, he's not happy with them. He's offering $6,600 to Republican Congress people who will support impeaching these judges. That's the maximum he can give in hard cash. It is, not for the first time, the power of the purse behind this presidency. The question, of course, laced with menace, is where does that power end? It is a direct challenge to the rule of law as it stands. And if Musk doesn't get what he wants, what then? What comes after the vilification of judges and of a judicial process? And we're seeing that's straining under extreme and increasing pressure.
Yeah, Congress members who have echoed Donald Trump's and Elon Musk's calls for judges to be impeached, notably Judge Boasberg, who has been, as we've been discussing, at the centre of that Venezuelan deportation issue.
It's hard to believe that this can be legal, isn't it? That, someone who's a special government employee could be offering money to the campaigns of people who support impeaching appointed judges. I think it shows that Elon Musk is not deterred by the fact that, there's been attacks on Teslas across the country and in Canada, that there's these widespread protests against Tesla, that Tesla's stock is tumbling. He is still a steadfast supporter of Donald Trump. And he's also been looking, according to the New York Times, at donating $100 million to groups controlled by the Trump political operation, deepening his support of Trump and showing that he is a Trump team player, that he's perhaps not just in this for himself, but he is, part of the wider Trump support machine. So clearly not shaken by any damage to his personal fortune.
Yeah, that's it for day 61 of Trump 100. Thanks so much for all your emails about what we should do after we get to the 100 days. There's been absolutely tons of responses. We appreciate that. Keep them coming in, your suggestions, and of course your questions for our Q&A episode, our question and answer. If you have any more of those, get in touch, please, at Trump100@sky.uk.
And don't forget our short survey too. We're asking for your input to help us improve all of our podcasts at Sky News. And you can find that link in the episode description.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow for day 62. Well, I won't, actually. I'm going on holiday for a week. Yes.
Oh, where are you off to?
I'm not telling you. I'm not telling anyone. So I can hide for a week.
Mark, this podcast can find you wherever. You can run, but you can't hide.
Bye for now.
All the best.
Bye.